Jimmie Rodgers was known as the singing brakeman, America's blue yodeler, and the father of country music. Jimmie Rodgers was born on September 8, 1897 in Meridian, Mississippi, the youngest of three sons. His mother died when he was very young, and Jimmie spent the next few years with relatives in southeast Mississippi and southwest Alabama. He eventually returned home to live with his father, Aaron Rodgers, a maintenance foreman on the Mobile and Ohio Railroad who had settled with a new wife in Meridian. Jimmie's affinity for entertaining and the road developed early. By age 13, he had twice organized traveling shows only to be brought home by his father. The first time, he stole some of his sister-in-law's bed sheets to make a crude tent. Upon his return to Meridian, he paid for the sheets with money that he had made from his shows. For the second trip, he charged his father, without his father's knowing, an expensive canvas tent. Not long after that, Mr. Rodgers found Jimmie his first railroad job as water boy on his father's gang. A few years later, Jimmie became a brakeman on the New Orleans and Northeastern Railroad, a position secured by his oldest brother Walter, who was a conductor on the line. In 1924, at the age of 27, Jimmie contracted tuberculosis. The disease temporarily ended his railroad career, but gave him a chance to get back to his first love, which was entertainment. He organized a traveling road show and performed across the Southeast until a cyclone destroyed his tent. He returned to railroad work as a brakeman on the east coast of Florida, but eventually his illness cost him his job. He relocated to Tucson, Arizona, thinking that the dry climate might lessen the effects of his TB, where he worked as a switchman for the Southern Pacific. The job lasted less than a year, and the Rodgers family, which by then included wife Carrie and daughter Anita, settled back in Meridian in 1927. Later that year, Jimmie traveled to Asheville, North Carolina. In February 1927, Asheville's first radio station, WWNC, went on the air, and on April 18th, Jimmie and Otis Kirkendall performed for the first time on the station. A few months later, Jimmie recruited a group from Tennessee called the Geneva Ramblers, and they secured a weekly slot on the station as the Jimmie Rodgers Entertainers. A review in the Asheville Times remarked that Jimmie Rodgers and his entertainers managed, with a type of music quite different than the station's usual material, but a kind that finds a cordial reception from a large audience. Another columnist said whoever that fellow is, he either is a winner or he's going to be. The Geneva Ramblers hailed from Bristol, Tennessee, and in late July of 1927, Rodgers' bandmates got word that Ralph Peer of the Victor Talking Machine Company was coming to Bristol to record area musicians. Rodgers and the group arrived in Bristol on August 3rd, where they auditioned for Peer, who agreed to record them the next day. But that night, the band argued about how it would be billed on the record, which led Jimmie to declare, "All right, I'll just sing one by myself." On August 4th, Jimmie Rodgers recorded two songs, "Sleep Baby Sleep" and "The Soldier's Sweetheart." For the recordings, he received $100. The recordings were released on October 7th, 1927, to modest success. But in November of that year, Peer recorded Rodgers again, this time at the Victor Studios in Camden, New Jersey. 4 songs made it out of that session: Ben Dewberry's Final Run, Mother Was a Lady, Away Out on the Mountain, and T for Texas. In the next 2 years, T for Texas, which was released as Blue Yodel, sold nearly 500,000 copies and rocketed Rodgers into stardom. In the next few years, Rodgers did a movie short called The Singing Brakeman and made various recordings across the country. He toured the Midwest with humorist Will Rogers. On July 16, 1930, he even recorded Blue Yodel No. 9, also known as Standing on the Corner, with a young jazz trumpeter named Louis Armstrong, whose wife Lillian played piano on the track. Jimmie Rodgers' next to last recordings were made in August 1932 in Camden, New Jersey once again, and it was clear that TB was getting the better of him. He had given up touring by then, but did have a weekly radio show in San Antonio, Texas, where he had relocated when T for Texas had become a hit. In 1933, Rodgers traveled to New York for recording sessions beginning May 17th. He completed 4 songs on the first take, but there was no question that Jimmie Rodgers was running out of track. When he returned to the studio after a day's rest, he had to record sitting down and soon retreated to his hotel, hoping to regain enough energy to finish the songs that he had been rehearsing. The recording engineer brought in 2 session musicians to help Rodgers when he got back to the studio a few days later, and together they recorded Mississippi Delta Blues, and for his last song of the session, Jimmie recorded Years Ago, solo acoustic, by himself, finishing as he'd started just 6 years earlier, a man and his guitar. Within 36 hours, the father of country music was gone. But his music lives on even till this day. We play him every day on Real Wild Radio. You can tune in at realwildradio.com or by downloading our free app. Simply visit your app store, search for Real Wild Radio, download, and tune in from anywhere. Real Wild Radio is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and we are listener supported. If you enjoy our programming and would like to support our mission, visit us at realwildradio.com and make a tax-deductible donation or consider becoming a station underwriter. Your support keeps us on the air and creating content like this. The information in today's episode is courtesy of JimmieRodgers.com. You can visit them for more information on Jimmie Rodgers as well as the annual Jimmie Rodgers Festival. And if you're ever in Meridian, Mississippi, visit the Jimmie Rodgers Museum. Let them know Real Wild Radio sent you. Thanks for listening. Stay real, stay wild.